like it. This great movement of ours, never been anything like it, and perhaps there will never be anything like it again. There's never been anything to compete with what we have all done. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and my fellow citizens, America's comeback starts right now. Two years ago, when I left office, the United States stood ready for its golden age. Our nation was at the pinnacle of power, prosperity, and prestige, towering above all rivals, vanquishing all enemies, and striding into the future, confident and so strong. In 4 short years, everybody was doing great. Men, women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, everybody was thriving like never before. There was never a time like this. We turned the page on decades of globalist sellouts and one-sided trade deals, lifted millions out of poverty, and together we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. When the virus hit our shores, I took decisive action and saved lives and the U.S. economy. And by October of the same year, America was roaring back with the #1 fastest economic recovery ever recorded. How about that? All of the incoming administration, and all they had to do was just sit back and watch. Inflation was non-existent. Our southern border was by far the strongest ever. And because the border was so tight, drugs were coming into our country at the lowest level in many, many years. Importantly, after decades of rising energy costs, the United States had finally attained the impossible dream of American energy independence, which soon would have turned into energy dominance. For the first time in memory, China was reeling and back on its heels. You've never seen that before, because the United States was outdoing them on every single front, and China was paying billions and billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs. The farmers know that because they got 28 billion of it. No president had ever sought or received $1 for our country from China until I came along, and we were getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Many people think that because of this, China played a very active role in the 2020 election. Just saying, just saying. Sure, that didn't happen. Instead of jobs and factories leaving America for China, they were for the first time ever leaving China for America. Businesses were pouring back because of our historic tax and regulation cuts, the biggest in both categories in history, bigger even than what Ronald Reagan was able to produce, and he produced a lot. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea were in check and respected. They respected the United States, and quite honestly, they respected me. I knew them well. I knew them well. The vicious ISIS caliphate, which no president was able to conquer, was decimated by me and our great warriors in less than 3 weeks, and al-Baghdadi, its founder, was hunted down and killed. North Korea had not launched a single long-range missile since my summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un nearly 3 years before. We developed a relationship, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Very good thing, actually, because look at what's happening today. My opponents made me out to be a warmonger and just a terrible person who would immediately go into war. They said during the 2016 campaign that if he becomes president, There will never be a war within weeks, and we will have wars like you've never seen before. It will happen immediately, and yet I've gone decades without a war, the first president to do it for that long a period. The world was at peace, America was prospering, and our country was on track for an amazing future because I made big promises to the American people, and unlike other presidents, I kept my promises. I kept them. Thank you very much. Under our leadership, we were a great and glorious nation, something you haven't heard for quite a long period of time. We were a strong nation, and importantly, we were a free nation. But now we are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation. For millions of Americans, the past 2 years under Joe Biden have been a time of pain, hardship, anxiety, and despair. As we speak, inflation is the highest in over 50 years. Gas prices have reached the highest levels in history and expect them to go much higher now that the strategic national reserves, which I filled up, have been virtually drained in order to keep gasoline prices lower just prior to the election. Joe Biden has intentionally surrendered our energy independence. There is no longer even a thought of dominance, and we are now begging for energy help from foreign nations, many of whom find us detestable. Our southern border has been erased, and our country is being invaded by millions and millions of unknown people, many of whom are entering for a very bad and sinister reason. And you know what that reason is. We will be paying a big price for this invasion into our country for years to come. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of deadly drugs, including very lethal fentanyl, are flooding across the now open and totally porous southern border. The blood-soaked streets of our once great cities are cesspools of violent crimes, which are being watched all over the world as leadership of other countries explain that this is what America and democracy is really all about. How sad. The United States has been embarrassed, humiliated, and weakened for all to see. The disasters in Afghanistan, perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, where we lost lives, left Americans behind, and surrendered $85 billion worth of the finest military equipment anywhere in the world. And Ukraine, which would have never happened if I were your president, are something and even the Democrats admit that. That's something I've seen them admit over and over again. But our enemies are speaking of us with scorn and laughter and derision because of those two events. But there are many more. Even just today, a missile was sent in, probably by Russia, to Poland, 50 miles into Poland, and people are going absolutely wild and crazy, and they're not happy. They're very, very angry. Now we have a president who falls asleep at global conferences, was held in contempt by the British Parliament over Afghanistan. Thanks to the words of wisdom, he said thank you to the wrong country for inviting him to a major summit on the environment, of all things. They fly for days to get there, and then he calls the country a name that was actually a country on another continent. and is leading us to the brink of nuclear war, a concept unimaginable just 2 short years ago. You cannot mention the nuclear word. It's too devastating. The Green New Deal and the environment, which they say may affect us in 300 years, is all that is talked about, and yet nuclear weapons, which would destroy the world immediately, are never even discussed as a major threat. Can you imagine? They say the ocean will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 200 to 300 years. But don't worry about nuclear weapons that can take out entire countries with one shot. Something is wrong with their thinking. Under Biden and the radical Democrats, America has been mocked, derided, and brought to its knees, perhaps like never before. But we are here tonight to declare that it does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. Two years ago, we were a great nation, and soon we will be a great nation again. The decline of America is being forced upon us by Biden and the radical left lunatics running our government right into the ground. This decline is not a fate we must accept. When given the choice, boldly, clearly, and directly, I believe the American people will overwhelmingly reject the left's platform of national ruin, and they will embrace our platform of national greatness and glory to America. Glory. Exactly 1 week ago, our citizens voted in the important midterm elections, and despite a ridiculously long and unnecessary period of waiting, far longer, in fact, than any third world country, just a short time ago, the Republicans won back control of the House of Representatives. And it was with a great Trump-endorsed candidate, Congressman-elect Kevin Kiley, who is a fantastic person, and I'm very happy it was his vote that did it. But we now won back. This happened just an hour ago. Much criticism is being placed on the fact that the Republican Party should have done better, and frankly, much of this blame is correct. But the citizens of our country have not yet realized the full extent and gravity of the pain our nation is going through, and the total effect of the suffering is just starting to take hold. They don't quite feel it yet, but they will very soon. I have no doubt that by 2024, it will sadly be much worse, and they will see much more clearly what happened and what is happening to our country. And the voting will be much different. 2024. Are you getting ready? And I am too. I am too. I do want to point out that in the midterms, my endorsement success rate was 232 wins and only 22 losses. You don't hear that from the media. And this is an elegant night and an elegant place, and I'm not going to use the term fake news media. So we're going to keep it very elegant. But you don't hear that from the media. But I think you will, because people are starting to see what happened. That's some score. And in the primaries was 98.6%. But they were still trying to blame me. And the reason for the success and that unprecedented success rate is that the Trump administration changed our nation on trade, on securing the border. We're the strongest, safest border ever in the history of our country. On Islamic terrorism, we had practically, just about, not that I can think of, no Islamic attacks, terrorist attacks during the Trump administration. And in fact, we got along very well with the various countries, including coming up with the Abraham Accords. It's a great thing, the Abraham Accords. But it's because of cutting taxes and cutting regulations at the highest level ever, and on building the greatest economy. Any time in the history of the world, there's never been an economy like we had just 2 years ago. Despite the outcome in the Senate, we cannot lose hope, and we must all work very hard for a gentleman and a great person named Herschel Walker, a fabulous human being who loves our country and will be a great United States Senator. Herschel Walker, get out and vote for Herschel, and he deserves it. He was an incredible athlete. He'll be an even better senator. Get out and vote for Herschel Walker. We elected a group of incredibly talented America First leaders who will be stars of our party for many years to come. In the popular vote, another thing that's not discussed for the House, we must remember that Republicans won 5 million more votes, the largest margin in many, many years, over the Democrats. 5 million more votes, that's a big thing. Breaking the radical Democrats' grip on Congress was crucial. So in other words, because of our great congressmen and all of our great congressmen and congresswomen, we have taken over Congress. Nancy Pelosi has been fired. Isn't that nice? I told them, I said, if you just keep a little bit lower standard, you're going to have a big victory. They said, let's win by 40 seats. Let's win by 50. I said, if you win by 2 seats, be happy. But she's on her way to another country right now. She's been fired. But we always have known that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream. And it's a word you don't use, 2 words. I don't want to be Joe. It's 2 words, American dream. That was not good what he did. There are a lot of bad things, like going to Idaho and saying, welcome to the state of Florida. I really love it. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy, if you want to know the truth. It really is. You ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic, with African American, with Asian, and just look at what's happening. This is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more good for our country. This is a job for grandmothers and construction workers, firefighters, builders, teachers, doctors, and farmers who cannot stay quiet any longer. You can't stay quiet any longer. You're angry about what's happening to our country. Our country is being destroyed before your very eyes. It's a job for every aspiring young person and every hard-working parent, for every entrepreneur and underappreciated police officer who is ready to shout for safety in America. The police are being treated so badly. These are great people. They can straighten out the crime. They're the ones that know how to do it. We have to give them back their respect and their dignity. This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together. Because the only force strong enough to defeat the massive corruption we are up against is you, the American people. It's true. The American people, the greatest people on earth, we love them all. And we love both sides. We're going to bring people together. We're going to unify people. And it was happening in the previous administration, previous to the previous. And what was bringing them together was success. Prior to COVID coming in, the people were calling me, you wouldn't believe it. People that were so far left, I figured they'd never speak to me and I would never speak to them. But our success was so incredible, like never before. And then COVID started coming in from China. We call it the China virus. Some people call it other things. But it was devastating and we built it back and did an incredible job. But when people say Republicans or Democrats or liberals or conservatives, I say we can all get together. And we were doing that. That was happening just prior because the success was greater than this country has ever had. We were leapfrogging China and leapfrogging everybody else, and everybody wanted a piece of it. But just as I promised in 2016, I am your voice. I am your voice. The Washington establishment wants to silence us, but we will not let them do that. What we have built together over the past 6 years is the greatest movement in history because it is not about politics. It's about our love for this great country, America, and we're not going to let it fail. I am running because I believe the world has not yet seen the true glory of what this nation can be. We have not reached that pinnacle, believe it or not. In fact, we can go very far. We're going to have to go far. First, we have to get out of this ditch. And once we're out, you'll see things that nobody imagined for any country. It's called the United States of America, and it's an incredible place. We are Americans, and we do not have to endure what has taken place in Washington, D.C. This is our country, our government, and the corridors of power, they're our corridors. They're not their corridors. These are our corridors. And we are coming to take those corridors back. So from now until Election Day in 2024, which will come very quickly, we'll go, look at how time flies, look how fast it's all going. I will fight like no one has ever fought before. We will defeat the radical left Democrats that are trying to destroy our country from within, and likewise protect us all. We want to protect us. We have to be protected from all of those nations out there that are looking to destroy us from beyond our shores. There are lots of nations that hate us gravely. And that's the problem when they look at us in disarray like we are right now, when we go to them begging for oil and we have more liquid gold under our feet than they have or any other nation has, and we don't use it because we're going to them. It's crazy what's happening. We can't let it continue. Joe Biden is the face of left-wing failure and Washington corruption. He had a big G20 dinner tonight. Everybody flew over to wherever they flew over, and guess what? He never showed up. They're still looking for him. What's going on? G20, I used to love that. The leaders, I used to make deals for our country like you wouldn't believe. It was one, give me the next one, give me the next one. and we got them to stop taking advantage of our country. Every nation took advantage of our country. We renegotiated deals with Mexico and Canada, USMCA. We got rid of the worst trade deal ever made. NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made. That's why the farmers love Trump, because we did a great job, but manufacturers also. And we did a deal, we restructured our terrible deal with Japan, and I did it with Prime Minister Abe, a great man who unfortunately is so sad. He was a great friend of mine, but a great man, loved his country so much, but we restructured and made it a really terrific deal, and with South Korea and so many other countries. And the best of all was what we did to China. We made an incredible deal, but after COVID, I don't even bother talking about it, because the devastation that caused for the entire world was too much to bear. I will ensure that Joe Biden does not receive 4 more years in 2020. Can't do it. Our country could not take that. And I say that not in laughter. I say that in tears. Our country could not take 4 more years. It can only take so much. It's all very fragile to start off with. It can only take so much. In 2020, I received the largest number of votes of any sitting president in history by a lot. And we will do it again, but with even more votes this time. Many have noted that huge gains we have made with Latino voters, and I believe we will set even greater records with this crucial vote in 2024. The Hispanic voter, the Latino voter, has been unbelievable. Great people, very entrepreneurial people, and they want security. And everyone thought when I did the wall, I built the wall, and they thought, oh, that would hurt me with the Hispanic vote. No, it helped me, because they understood. They wanted safety. They wanted security. And they understood the border better than anybody else. So they were amazed that we started that trend, and now we're continuing with that trend. You look at what we've done in Florida, what everybody's doing now in Florida and Texas, along the border in Texas, won every single community. I won every single community. Governor of Texas called. Great gentleman, just got reelected. And he said to me, I'd like to talk to you for a second. Well, he said, you've done something that nobody else has done. You've won every single area along the borders, the longest since Reconstruction. I said, Reconstruction? I guess you call that the Civil War? That's what I call it? That's what I call it. Governor Abbott, very good man, and he's working hard, but it's horrible, because what's happening is they're just sending hundreds of thousands of people right through his state, right through Arizona, right through all of the states. What's happening is they're coming up all of the states. And we can't have it anymore. This campaign will be about issues, vision, and success, and we will not stop. We will not quit until we've achieved the highest goals and made our country greater than it has ever been before. And we can do that. We can do it. Our victory will be built upon big ideas, bold ambitions, and daring dreams for America's future. We need daring dreams. It is not enough merely to complain or oppose. We don't want to be critics. We don't want to be complainers. I never wanted to be a critic. I never respected critics. They tell people what's wrong, but they can't do it themselves. We will win because we will fight with every measure of our strength and with every ounce of our energy to lift up the working men and working women of America and to restore the fabric of this nation. The radical left Democrats have embraced an extreme ideology of government domination and control. Our approach is the opposite, one based on freedom, values, individual responsibility, and just plain common sense. It's common sense. In 2 years, the Biden administration has destroyed the U.S. economy, just destroyed it. With victory, we will again build the greatest economy ever. It will take place quickly. We will build the greatest economy ever. And if you remember, I did it twice. I did it before COVID and then handed off something where the stock market was higher than just prior to COVID coming in. And we did it twice, and we will do it again, but this time we'll do it bigger, stronger, better than anybody can even imagine. And one of the beautiful things of the pause, if there is such a thing as a beautiful thing, but one of the important factors of the pause is that we see how bad they've done. So we will be able to do it properly, and it will be much easier. Everybody will agree with us because everybody sees what a bad job has been done during this 2-year period, and it will be a 4-year period. Everybody sees that. It will be much easier for us to do what has to be done. We will immediately tackle inflation and bring down to a level that it was, we were at 0, but actually the best number is 1%. Do you know that? You don't want it really 0. But we were at 0. We actually got it to exactly 1%, the perfect number. One thing every economist agrees, don't have it 0, have it like at 1%. They even say 1 to 2, but I said let's do 1. And we had it at 1%, and we had it there for a long period of time, and we had the value of the dollar. We had it so that this country could make a lot of money, and I fought other countries where they devalued their dollar, or they devalued their currency, whether it was the pound or whether it was the yuan or the yen. And I used to fight like cats and dogs with the leaders of other countries because they were stealing from us. When they did that, they had artificial devaluations of their currency. It's a very important thing. I haven't even heard it mentioned in 2 years. It's a very important thing. It's very hard for us to compete when they do that artificially. And they had to pay a big price when they did it. And they never really did it for very long. I said, we're not going to do business with you anymore as a country. And they believed me. And they let it go back up. Instead of putting America last, as the Biden administration has done very, very openly and bravely, because I can't imagine saying, let's put America last. I think it takes courage. We will again put America first. Every policy. Thank you very much. We do love our country, isn't it? That's why we're here. I didn't need this. I had a very nice, easy life. This is something I didn't need, and a lot of you people don't need either. But we love our country. We have to take care of our country. We have to save our country. Every policy must be geared toward that which supports the American worker, the American family, and businesses, both large and small, and allows our country to compete with other nations on a very level playing field, which we never had until I came along and the Trump administration came along. And now we're losing it. They're moving back into China. They're moving back into these other countries. It's horrible. That means low taxes, low regulations, and fair trade, much of which I've already completed, but now will even greatly enhance. Other countries should pay for the privilege of coming into the American marketplace. They have to pay to come into our country and make all of that money, take it away from us. And thanks to the Trump administration, still the best and the biggest country in the world is what we have. We have the best and the biggest. If you remember, for many years, you can look in your projection books, China was going to take over from us as the largest economy in the world in 2018 or 2019. I said, I don't like that timing. And I was with President Xi, who's now president for life. I call him king. He said, no, I'm not the king. I said, yes, you are the king. You're president for life. It's the same thing. But I said, President, you can't do these things. You can't. Remember, they had China 25. That means China was going to take over virtually the whole world economy by 25. I said, that's not a nice sign. I don't want that sign. They took it down. They took down the whole slogan. Probably will be coming back at some point in the near future. But I found it very insulting. I said, I find that very insulting. On day one, we will end Joe Biden's war on American energy. And you will see, when that happens, you will see energy costs come down. And because energy is so big and so important, you will see inflation dropping. You will see it come down. It's a thing of beauty. And you wouldn't think it's that complicated. Now, what has been complicated a little bit is what's happened to so many other things. I believe originally started by this energy disaster. We were $1.87 a gallon for gasoline, and now it's hitting $5, $6, $7, and even $8, and it's going to go really bad. The socialist disaster known as the Green New Deal, which is destroying our country, and the many crippling regulations that it has spawned, will be immediately terminated so that our country can again breathe and grow and thrive like it should. It's very, very much hurting our country. Germany tried it, Germany tried it. They were up for about a year. Remember I sent to Angela. Remember Angela? Do you remember Angela? Nobody's remembering her now. Angela Merkel, I sent her a white flag of surrender. She said, but why do you send this to me, Donald? I said, Angela, I send it to you because this is a flag of surrender. You are getting 78% of your energy from Russia. And when that happens, history has proven that it's not good for Germany. Just take a look over the last 150 years. It hasn't been good. What I didn't know would take place so fast. And Germany closed, as you know, all of its coal-powered plants and its nuclear plants. They closed everything, and now they're building coal plants, and they're building them fast. And China's building a coal plant every week. Every week they open up another, and then they talk about all of the things that they do environmentally. They are watching us die with the Green New Deal, with our windmills and with our solar that doesn't have the power to fire up our great factories and our great plants. They are watching us die, and they're laughing as it happens. Remember, economic security is national security, and that's what it is. We need economic security. That is why we will launch an all-out campaign to eliminate America's dependence on China. We will bring our supply chains, which are a disaster right now. You can't get anything, and good luck getting a turkey for Thanksgiving. Number one, you won't get it, and if you do, you're going to pay 3 to 4 times more than you paid last year. But we will bring our supply chains and manufacturing base back home, as we were strongly doing during the Trump administration, and we will systematically bring back wealth, health, and success to the American middle class and to America itself. Please. Yeah, please sit down. I feel so guilty having you stand. No, you've been standing for the whole event. I feel very guilty. I don't want that to happen. To every worker and family struggling to survive in the Biden economy with inflation destroying your family and your life, this campaign will be for you. Help is on the way. Joe Biden has abolished America's borders. We are going to restore and secure America's borders just like we had them before, best ever. We built the wall, and now we will add to it. Now, we built the wall, we completed the wall, and then we said, let's do more, and we did a lot more. And as we were doing it, we had an election that came up, and when they came in, they had 3 more weeks to complete the additions to the wall, which would have been great, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. And that's when I realized that they actually want to have this disaster known as open borders. Hard to believe, isn't it? But one of the reasons we had so much success at the border was because of the fact that 2 things. We got Mexico to give us free of charge 28,000 soldiers. That helps. And President of Mexico is a great gentleman, by the way. Socialist, but that's okay. He can't have everything. But he's a great man and a great friend of mine. But 28,000 soldiers while we were building the wall. And then when the wall was finished, that's how we set all these records. We have records that nobody can even compete with. Right now, it's a disaster. I believe it's 10 million people coming in, not 3 or 4 million people. They're pouring into our country. We have no idea who they are and where they come from. We have no idea what's happening to our country. We're being poisoned. Within moments of my inauguration, catch and release will be gone forever. remain in Mexico.
All right, so pictures on your screen are of the Prime Minister at the G20 summit in Bali. Heads of state over there meeting, even as India, of course, is set to take over the presidency of the G20. The Prime Minister, of course, has met a host of leaders already. Key among them, of course, was the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and the US President Joe Biden. Currently also we are given to understand that there is a lot of significance at this meeting that you see on your screen. Leaders of all those G20 nations at the meeting. Now there's a lot on agenda as far as G20 is concerned, but the focus is going to remain on energy and food security, and perhaps there will also of course be some tension today because there have been two missiles that landed in Poland. That obviously is going to be discussed as well. The Russians say that it wasn't theirs, but Poland and the US, of course, have said that they will jointly investigate what's happening. Do remember that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is not attending the summit. However, the Foreign Minister of Russia is at the summit now. Prime Minister Modi, of course, made it extremely clear that this is not the time for war, and that's resonated once again in his speech yesterday.
की निगाहें भारत पर होंगी क्योंकि 2023 में भारत के G20 शिखर सम्मेलन का आयोजन करने जा रहा है।
बिल्कुल अरुण, अध्यक्षता जब मिलेगी तो कहीं ना कहीं ये बहुत ही बड़े सम्मान की बात है और
All right. So as we were saying, of course, India assumes the presidency of the G20 after this summit, and it's going to be very important for India, and it's going to be a great opportunity as well to host all these countries and to take forward issues that India thinks are extremely important. Now, this summit in Bali, of course, is being held under the theme of Recover Together. This, of course, is a post-pandemic the first G20 that we are seeing with all leaders essentially coming together. And the theme Recover Together essentially talks around the fact that all the G20 countries need to work together for energy as well as food security. Of course, leaders also do take selfies, so that on your screen is sometime being enjoyed by the leaders over there who have assembled for this meeting. I think sitting right next to the Prime Minister is the French President Emmanuel Macron. We are also told that the Prime Minister, of course, had a brief meeting with the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and there was a meeting between all right. And of course, we also know that there was no designated meeting between the Chinese President and Prime Minister Modi, but they did meet each other at dinner. Mr. Nalapat joining us right now on this as well. Mr. Nalapat, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. G20, of course, you can see those pictures over there. India assumes presidency this year. What do you think for India will be the key goals and objectives? And also very quickly, Mr. Nalapat, do you think that, the fact that there's some trouble in Poland would have been discussed? And do you think that that will lead to more pressure being put on Russia?
Well, I'd like to say that the economy globally is suffering a lot as a consequence of the Ukraine war. And Prime Minister Modi has been absolutely accurate in saying that this should be an era of peace. Unfortunately, I don't see peace happening, mainly because Joe Biden and Olaf Scholz, to name just two of the NATO leaders, they seem obsessed with continuing this war, and Zelensky seems obsessed with having a maximalist position, which is not going to be acceptable to Russia. So this is going to go on. The G20 is not going to make much of a difference to that. But the reality is that it will showcase India's stand. And India's stand is a stand in favor of peace. It's a stand in favor of a clean environment. It's a stand in favor of making economic growth and the conditions for economic growth front and center in international policy. That is a statement that will resonate among the leaders of the G20. There's no question about it. and Prime Minister Modi got a very cordial welcome. From all the leaders of the G20, frankly, with the exception of Xi Jinping. The reality is China is extremely wary of India. China does not want to see India grow because it's afraid that it may grow at the expense of its own expansion. And that is the one country in the G20 that, frankly, we cannot be described as a friend of India. But barring that, it's very interesting how countries across the world, whether it's Cambodia, whether it's Laos, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, they are all very friendly to India under Narendra Modi. And the real reality is that's because Modi has emerged as a global statesperson, and he's essentially giving a message of the need for development, the need for peace, the need for a good ecology. And that development is being reinforced by several of the policies that India is following.
Absolutely. Mr. Narapat, over the next 1 year, as India, of course, takes over the presidency of the G20 summit, what do you feel should be our main priorities and how do you think it could work in India's favor going forward?
Well, I'd like to say that the main priority needs to be to ensure a free and open and inclusive Indo-Pacific, because the reality is that the age of conquests, the age of expansionism should have ended. Regrettably, it has not ended, and one country is there, very active in the G20, and I'm sorry to say that ex-President Trump is going to be greatly helped by the visual images of Joe Biden almost running towards Xi Jinping and essentially ignoring all the activities that Xi Jinping is engaged in throughout this particular region in which this conference is being held, whether it's India, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, all these countries, Taiwan, they're all having their sovereignty under threat by a very aggressive China. And what does Biden do? He tries his level best to be Mr. Nice Guy. Xi Jinping is not Mr. Nice Guy. He's made that very clear. And the Chinese readout, if you believe the Chinese readout, and so far the Americans have not denied it, it essentially means Biden is conceding to Xi on almost every critical issue. And this is going to work very much in favor of the Republicans. Frankly, if Biden is made the candidate once again of the Democratic Party, then Trump has a chance. There's no question about it. But frankly, more and more, as the political situation in the US develops, it's very clear that Joe Biden is going to be a one-term president. If he accepts that gracefully in the next 6 months, good. Otherwise,